I'll now give a few moments for the front benches to swap over. Thanks, Jim. Thank you, David. We now come to the backbench debate on financial education. Jerome Mayhew to move.
I beg to move, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we consider financial education. And before we start, I should make reference to my register of interest that I am, in fact, the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on financial education for young people. And many of the members of that august body are represented on the benches today. And it's worth pointing out, Madam Deputy Speaker, that that is the second largest all-party parliamentary group in Parliament, beaten only by the communal love for beer. And there is a reason why the APPG for financial education is so popular. It's because it is a profoundly important topic that affects the lives and life chances of our communities right across the country. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, we can't sugarcoat this, we're in a mess. We're in a mess about financial education, financial literacy in our economy and in our society, and we've known we've been in a mess for ages. My own education, going back a few years, I accept. One of the reasons why I was first drawn to this topic was because I went through the whole of my education, didn't receive any education on personal finance at all. In fact, it's true to say that I've been taught considerably more about the formation of Oxbow Lakes than I have been about personal finance, about debt management, about budgeting, about saving, about compound interest, about pensions, about ISAs, all the things that as grown-ups you worry about and are concerned about and will have such an impact on your life, and yet simply missing from my education. But it doesn't stop there, I'm afraid, because my children, aged 21, 18 and 15, I've asked them about their education, and they've received nothing at all. There has been no improvement. And yet we know that this matters profoundly. We know that financially chaotic households, if you're unfortunate enough to grow up in a financially chaotic household, you have no education from your parents, you don't understand about debt, you see the consequence of it, you don't understand about budgeting, and then prudent financial management becomes a middle-class secret. So if we care about the poor, if we care about the most disadvantaged in our society, Madam Deputy Speaker, we must have financial education as a core part of the curriculum in our schools. And we know that financial stress has a huge impact both on our economy and on our society. Barclays Bank, way back in 2014, did some research saying that 17.5 million hours were lost to the economy because of financial stress. 17.5 million hours. And we also know that financial stress, financial worries, is one of the core components to family breakdown. The breakup of relationships, the arguments within the home, the distress caused to children. And yet we know what the solution is as well. Here we are, we've had loads of research. The Money and Pensions Service has said that attitudes towards money and finances are fundamentally established by the age of just 7. We know that financial education within schools is directly correlated with higher career earnings. It's directly correlated to reduced personal debt, directly correlated to increased pension savings, directly correlated to increased savings more generally. So here we are, we've all been elected to this place. We've all come here, I assume, to seek to improve the life and life chances of our constituents. If there is one thing that we can do, each of us, in our time in this place, getting effective financial education into the core curriculum and having it taught would be the single biggest thing we can do, I think, for our constituents. And I say that to the Minister as well, because she needs to reflect what her ambitions are for her time in this place. So we've had a crack at it. Back in 2014, we all thought we'd done a jolly good job, or our predecessors did, because they put financial education as part of the national curriculum in secondary schools in England. In the devolved nations, it's actually in primary schools as well. But 10 years later, on the 10th anniversary last year, the All-Party Group for Financial Education undertook some research to see what the impact of that inclusion in the national curriculum had been. And the awful truth was that the impact had been virtually negligible. And the reason for that was because it just simply wasn't, in fact, being taught. We made the mistake as policymakers saying, we've changed the policy, job done, that's the solution. We didn't go the next step and ensure that the policy was being implemented effectively. Because 55% of teachers, the teachers who are responsible for implementing this national curriculum, were either unaware or unsure themselves whether it was even a requirement to teach it. And 62% of children had no recollection at all of having received any financial education. Well, why is it? Why do we think we solved the problem with policy, and yet in practice the change didn't take place? Well, part of the answer is that it was included within PSHE and that it wasn't measured. It wasn't measured by Ofsted. And we all know that you get what you measure. Another part of the answer is that teachers lack confidence because they too haven't received education. They too are unsure about their personal finances. And it depends far too often on having a personal convert amongst the teaching staff. So there are some schools which do a brilliant job on this, but it's wholly dependent too often on there being one member of staff who takes the bit between the teeth. Now, just today, Madam Deputy Speaker, Young Enterprise, who operate the secretariat of the all-party group, have published a report called Making the Classroom Count, where they've done research and assessment of the current state of provision and how we can improve it. If you look to the conclusions from that, the first one is curriculum, both in primary and secondary education. This is too important to be left to the peripheries of the educational process. It needs to be recognised as being a core element. And if it's a core part of the curriculum, it needs to be measured as such by Ofsted. And that's the second issue, accountability. We must inspect for financial education because you do get what you measure. The third issue is guidance. There needs to be access to trusted teaching materials for hesitant teachers. Too often we've heard in the group that teachers are not sure which of the resources which are out there, a plethora of resources, should be the ones they trust. They're naturally hesitant about having branded materials coming into schools. So we need the government to take a step in this and build on the work that's already being done to have trusted resources. Fourth, awareness. The government must be clear and must be express in this that financial education is a core part of the curriculum. And finally, last, because it is least important, money, resources. They're necessary. We do need money to achieve the above, but if the government did 1 to 4, we would be 95% of the way there. And there is a solution to the money side of things. I understand that the Chancellor is never keen to write a cheque, but we do have the Dormant Assets Fund, where financial inclusion is a core element of the distribution of dormant assets. We also have the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who have offered to match fund that element for financial inclusion. Surely there is a way that the government can make best use of that money. So now is the time, Madam Deputy Speaker. We have the government's review of the national curriculum. Now is the time for the government to take a bold step, not just to have policy, to make sure that policy is acted upon. And so I ask the Minister, will she include financial education as part of the primary curriculum? Will she undertake to measure what she wants to see in our schools by requiring Ofsted to report on both primary and secondary education of financial matters? Will she embed it across the curriculum and not just in PCHE? And will she show some ambition in the future with the 2029 OECD PISA assessment on financial literacy? Will she commit to the government applying to join that scheme? And will she also develop the very good work actually, of the Oak Academy, which has produced a number, I think about 42 online lessons to support financial education, financial literacy? But will she follow that up with a commitment to develop paper resources, trusted paper resources for the educational sector? And finally, will she consider the proper use of the Dormant Assets Fund and the National Heritage Lottery Fund, and match and direct that additional funding source to financial literacy education in our primary and secondary schools. So I started, Madam Deputy Speaker, talking about ambition. I want to finish with that as well. It is profoundly important for the life chances of our constituents over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years that we grasp this, that we grasp it now. We spend so much time in tittle-tattle, frankly, in this chamber, debating cheap points which may make the headlines that evening or tomorrow. I don't care whether this debate is reported if we can get this simple change to the direction of our educational processes and deliver for our constituents. Now is the time to do it. Now is the time.
The question is, as on the order paper, and if I start with an informal 5-minute time limit so that members can help each other. Claire Hazelgrove.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for Broadland and Fakenham as the Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Financial Education for Young People for securing this debate. As the Vice Chair of this All-Party Parliamentary Group, and having been a trustee with Girl Guiding Bristol and South Gloss, and of brilliant local youth work charity, FACE, I should first not only declare my interest, but my deep and long-standing interest in this debate. Improving financial education, both for children and adults, although I'll focus on the former this afternoon, was the policy area among thousands of possible ones that I chose to focus on in my public policy master's degree. Madam Deputy Speaker, this unfortunately wasn't because I thought that financial education was going well and that perhaps there could be lessons to apply to other policy areas, but because of how lacking financial education has felt. This includes my own personal experience of a real lack of financial education at school in an otherwise excellent state education. Important things like different types of mortgages and key differences between secured and unsecured loans shouldn't feel new at the point of major financial commitment and, crucially, at the point of risk. Indeed, in January 2020, the TUC reported that total unsecured household debt, so not including mortgages and with typically higher interest rates, rose to £407 billion, its highest ever level in the UK, and this was before the pandemic. As things stand, despite financial education having been added to the secondary curriculum in England through PSHE in 2014, the Money and Pension Service found in 2022 that only 38% of young people recalled receiving financial education at school. Now, I think it's important to be clear that this quest for better financial education isn't about placing a higher value on any particular financial choices above others, but to say everyone should feel able to feel capable and confident in making whatever financial decisions are right for them and their circumstances. Currently, that is too often not the case. Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe that someone's background shouldn't determine their life chances and life choices. And this current lottery of financial education quality is a huge barrier in making this a reality. The next generation should always do better than the last, and acting to improve financial education would help make good on that great British promise for all young people across the Filton and Bradley Stoke constituency and beyond. Madam Deputy Speaker, I raised financial education in my maiden speech and was grateful to, in recent months, also have the chance to raise this issue in the House with our excellent Secretary of State for Education. I asked whether the independent and very welcome Curriculum and Assessment Review would consider foundational life skills like financial education at all key stages, along with the resources needed to teach them with confidence as part of its work. While, of course, none of us in this House can preempt the conclusions of this important review, I was glad to hear the Secretary of State's confidence that the review would carefully consider what young people need in this area and any support that teachers may need for any reformed curriculum. Reported teacher confidence is understandably low, as we've also heard already this afternoon, in teaching a subject that many of them were not taught either. Again, understandably, research also shows that teachers struggle to prioritise subjects that are not assessed and are within PSHE. Indeed, the Money Charities survey and in-depth interviews with teachers around the country in 2016 found that the prioritisation of assessed subjects was the most commonly identified barrier to delivering financial education, with 80% of teachers citing it as one. So even where financial education is on the curriculum at secondary level, it does not appear to be there firmly enough. Teachers give so much and have so much to contend with, and I don't believe that anyone in this House would wish to further overburden them, or indeed the curriculum, by adding more standalone subjects. In my personal view, looking at how financial education can be woven through existing relevant subjects, such as maths, to ensure that all young people are receiving the most relevant education to support them to thrive throughout life, feels important to consider. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, as the daughter of a retired head teacher, I know better than to delve any further into the day-to-day from these benches. But the evidence does suggest that the current approach isn't working for anyone. Yet there is a wider issue here too. The University of Cambridge found that financial habits typically form from around age 7. So this strongly suggests that early support is crucial if we are to break down this barrier to opportunity. It is also worth noting that financial education is on the curriculum at both primary and secondary level in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So it is in England in particular where we are lagging behind, though implementation remains a challenge more widely. And while formal education is of course important, there is also a vital role for other organisations, from financial institutions to community organisations, and a number are already playing their part. From Go Henry, helping young people save while taking part in money missions to build their long-term financial knowledge and well-being, to HSBC and Girl Guiding, working together to help girls and young women build those two things I touched on earlier, capability and confidence. I was thrilled to speak at the launch of their new I'm Money Confident badge, even if I have no longer my own sash to sew it onto. I won't be able to mention them all, but there are many more organisations working in this space, not least Young Enterprise, who are a diligent and creative secretariat for the all-party parliamentary group. And I was also glad to hear from Aviva in Stoke Gifford in my constituency recently about the work they're doing with young people too. Madam Deputy Speaker, I hope you won't mind if I share my thanks to all the teachers and wider organisations using their time, resources and creativity on financial education as part of our collective pursuit of supporting all young people to thrive. I look forward to hearing other contributions to this debate this afternoon and continuing to work for change in this important area and for a fairer future for all.
Peter Bedford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is an immensely important debate. I'd like to thank my honourable friend for bringing it before the House today. I'm sure that members will have seen the Barclays Bank television advert explaining how money habits and behaviours are formed by young people by the age of 7. But governments of all colours have continuously failed in promoting teaching of sound financial management to young people. The education system is supposed to be teaching young people the game of life, yet we are not currently even teaching them the rules of the game before they play. Previous governments have tried. The coalition government introduced it into the national curriculum in 2014, but very little progress has been made since then. And it's an indictment that 1 in 2 Brits were found to be unable to pass a financial literacy test run by the OECD. The UK is well below comparable Western nations such as France, Norway and Canada. Indeed, we rank alongside Thailand and Albania. How on earth can it be the case that for one of the wealthiest countries in the world, this is where we sit? So why is this particularly concerning now? Technology has opened up a new world of consumerism. I'm able to sit from the comfort of my own home and purchase pretty much any item I would like. This, of course, is the epitome of having the freedom over making one's own financial decisions. However, comes with this freedom is an understanding of how these choices will impact my own personal financial well-being. Whereas young people and generations to come can, at a click of a mouse or even a touch of a screen, make high-value purchases without the knowledge of how this may impact them, because they are not taught the importance of budgeting and saving. Young people are becoming addicted to buy now, pay later schemes, which allow them to enter into credit agreements without fully assessing whether they'll be able to afford them in a few months' time. There is also the additional threats with fraudsters targeting young people in the hope that they will not know how to deal with complex financial problems. Is it any wonder that 96% of young people worry about money daily? Clearly, we must do something about this. The ongoing national curriculum review should not remove any aspect of the financial education that already exists, since it remains an important part of school life for students. It is not just me saying this, but 95% of parents believe that schools should be at the heart of developing better understanding of financial education for young people. Alongside keeping it on the national curriculum, there does need to be better support for teachers and to bring long-lasting improvement. I hear of teachers having real concerns about their own ability to teach students about sound money. So I'd strongly urge the department and their partners to instigate better advice for teachers and how they should improve the quality of these lessons. Finally, being a strong supporter of apprenticeships and vocational training, I would also like to see government promoting financial teaching post-16 educational settings. Put simply, we see 1 in 3 students leaving school at 16 for apprenticeships or employment. At a time of increased spending, potentially they lose all chance of being taught financial education. Yeah. Is it therefore no wonder that nearly half of all apprentices struggle to keep up with their bills? Yeah. So to conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, it would be negligence of the highest order if we do not protect and strengthen financial education provision for our young people. We simply mustn't stand idle and allow the next generation to walk into financial ruin through not understanding the thing, whether we like it or not, makes the world go round.
Yeah.
I call Will Stern.
And I thank the honourable gentleman for bringing forward this important debate. It's something we don't discuss enough, if I'm being honest, and it was something I wasn't hugely knowledgeable on until my partner became a financial advisor. We have lots of financial discussions now. More often than not, it's her telling me I spend too much money on Warhammer. I try and say it's an investment. It's definitely not an investment. But it opened my eyes massively, and there were some shocking things that came up. Like, for example, only 20% of self-employed people pay into a pension. And that is something which is a ticking time bomb, and it's something we have to address. And I really think that comes through education. And obviously, as the honourable gentleman from mid-Leicestershire said, our habits towards money are formed at an early age. This is something we know there's overwhelming evidence around this. So it's something that as a government we need to get a grip of and we need to start getting on top of. I did see my honourable friend over there squinting a little bit when they were talking about changing what teachers should be teaching, how they should be doing it. He's got a terrible poker face. But I do think we do have to look at how we can introduce this across the board, so it's not just putting more pressures on teachers, because I think they're under enough pressure as it is. What I would say is there are some examples of some really good things going on in the private sector. We've got some great companies like Nationwide, whose headquarters are in Swindon, something I'm incredibly proud of, and Santander, who aren't in Swindon, but they are still doing some great work, so I'll give them the praise. I think the government needs to work a little bit with some of these private companies and see what they're doing and what services they can offer to help alongside our schools, so we can let our teachers teach and not overburden them. But this is definitely a debate I'm really proud to be part of, and I think our government, if we want to look after people and make sure that they don't suffer with mental health issues in the future due to financial stress, we have to get a grip of it. So thank you for bringing this forward, and I look forward to hearing what the Minister has to say and the rest of the members in this chamber. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
I'll Zoe Franklin.
Speaker, and I'd like to start by thanking the honourable member for bringing this important debate. I find the stats that you can read and that members are raising in this House about children's remembering of what financial literacy education they have had really sad, and I get and completely understand that it's not because teachers don't want to provide the education. It's often, as others have raised, that stretch of time that we have in the current education system, that perhaps lack of confidence they themselves have. And I have a 17-year-old son, and I've asked him a number of times, has he had the opportunity to learn about budgeting at school? And perhaps it's the memory of a 17-year-old child, but I think it's also probably more likely to be that actually he, like many of his friends, don't remember having that important opportunity to learn about how they budget. And I sat down the weekend with him to go through that, and I realised actually how much we as adults take for granted the things we have learnt over the course of life, but we shouldn't be relying on the passage of time and the experience of life. We need to be teaching education, we need to be educating our young people about financial literacy from a really early age. And as a Liberal Democrat and as a mum, I think it's really important that we use the curriculum view to modernise the curriculum and look at a curriculum for life. This is the perfect opportunity, and as part of that, there needs to be financial literacy. And in particular, my personal view is, and I know might raise different eyebrows across the House, I think actually putting it into the maths curriculum might help young people to see maths as something that is relevant to their real lives. I'm sure we've all had conversations with teenagers that go, how is maths relevant to my own life? They say it's not. Well, it very much is when you get into adulthood and you're having to deal with mortgages, household budgeting, and the rest. And this idea that the reality of household budgeting clearly came to the forefront of my mind when I met with CAP in my constituency. They do fantastic work working with people who have got into debt, often through no fault of their own, through the cost of living crisis and personal circumstances. But actually at the root of it is often a lack of financial literacy, and it is clear that we need to provide more opportunities for young people, but also for adults, because we've already said that young people tend to also get their financial education through their parents. So I'd just end by asking the government and the Minister here today to ensure that on the curriculum review there is a real deep commitment to putting financial education into the curriculum in a way that is going to help children to remember it and take it forward in their lives, but also to provide support for adults to get the financial education they need so they can complete the circle of empowering themselves to be better with their finances, but also empowering the next generation. Thank you.
Yeah. Amanda Hack.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Honourable Member for Broadland and Fakenham for bringing this crucial conversation into the Chamber. We're not born with the ability to open an ISA, choose a private pension or invest our savings. We don't have a natural intuition on how to save, how to manage debt or how the tax system works. So why is it we're sending young people from school with little or no formal financial education? Since working for Leicestershire Training Enterprise Council 25 years ago, when we supported young people and adults into education, to holding a number of roles within the social housing sector supporting tenant welfare, it's clear there's a gap in people's knowledge around financial education. And I'm really proud of some of the work I've done before I came to this place, particularly when I led a team to set up the Financial and Digital Inclusion Project, MoneyWise, for Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland, targeting individuals, including in my constituency of North West Leicestershire, who were digitally and financially excluded. Through the running of this project, it was clear to see the lack of basic skills around financial education and how much it was holding people back. Through this project, we were able to empower people to have a much more positive relationship with their finances. As a member of the Work and Pensions Select Committee, it's already become apparent that the lack of conversation and knowledge, probably confidence about long-term financial planning, is having a detrimental impact on our relationship with our finances. By providing financial education for young people, we have an opportunity to reset our relationship with money and skills. A study by the Compare the Market and the financial education charity My Bank found that almost 2/3 of adults surveyed say they didn't recall receiving financial education at school. The same study found that only 2 in 5 respondents considered themselves financially literate. There is hope though. My son is currently studying core maths for A-level at AS, and we've had many conversations about financial management, from insurance to rent, from mortgages to savings, just because of this course. There is an issue that can unite us across party lines. Our young people deserve that, and at the very least, they deserve a basic understanding on how to manage their finances in the future. And it's not just current and future generations that could benefit from this. The Investing and Savings Alliance projected that if the government were to prioritise financial education, we could inject an extra £7 billion into the economy each year. This would make a real, measurable and tangible difference for so many young people, and I look forward and welcome the Minister's response.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Broadland and Fakenham for securing this debate and for his valuable work on the APPG. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of my first jobs was working in advice services. Time and time again, people came to us for help after they'd stacked up debt. Many people have the same story. It started out with not having a household budget and having to borrow on credit cards or through payday loans on astronomical rates of interest, and eventually being caught in a spiral of debt and bad decision making. I'd like to thank the wonderful staff and volunteers in the Citizens Advice Service in my constituency of North Warwickshire and Bedworth. who do fantastic work trying to help people to get back on their feet after problems with debt. Work by Brandcab and North Warwickshire Citizens Advice demonstrates that debt has changed for people in my constituency. Instead of loans and credit cards, the components of debt have moved worryingly to basic housing and utility costs. Before COVID, financial capability was at the heart of what they did, and they won a national award for their work until lack of funding put an end to this. My area has the 5th highest rate of insolvencies per 10,000 adults in the country, and 18 to 24-year-olds account for 12% of all insolvencies. This is why financial education is so crucial. Becoming insolvent before the age of 24 will have untold effects on your financial stability for years to come, and we need to stop more young people falling into this hole. I support the recommendations of the Education Committee to review the contents of the maths curriculum to expand the provision and relevance of financial education. This is a sentiment shared by teachers at Polesworth School in my constituency of North Warwickshire and Bedworth. I support the work done by people like Bob Boland in my constituency. Sorry, that's Rob Boland. He runs Cotswold Independent Financial Services and works with the Personal Finance Society, who carry out important educational work around budgeting and tax, but also staying safe from scams. It's staggering that I have people coming to my surgery now who have well-paid jobs, but when they went to university, they had no idea about the impact of the debt they were signing up to with their student loan or what the interest rate even meant. We must also recognise that our young people face new challenges. Social media has fueled a get-rich-quick mindset, with influencers encouraging young people to try and make money quickly through risky schemes. This is exacerbated by the cost of living crisis. Perhaps if Liz Truss had spent a bit more time in financial education classes when she was at her grammar school in Leeds, she wouldn't have plunged this country into economic disaster. Too often, we forget that our young people were hit hard by the crisis and are still suffering from financial insecurity. I met with sixth form students at Nicholas Chamberlain School in Bedworth recently, and they were talking to me about how much more difficult it was to find work at the weekends or in the evenings, and they'd never received any kind of education or help around personal finances. I'm pleased that the government's commissioned an expert-led curriculum and assessment review to ensure young people leave school ready for work and ready for life. This, I know, is welcomed by local businesses in my constituency. It's time that we demystify everyday finances so that everyone can be equipped with the skills they need for everyday life without having to turn to an advice service for help.
I call David Burton-Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I too thank the honourable gentleman from Broadland and Fakenham for bringing this forward and the work he does on the APPG for financial education. I'd love to see a world where everybody is financially literate, where people understand their finances, manage them properly, invest, save, manage debt, protect themselves appropriately. In other words, where people are financially savvy. It's good for people and it's good for our economy. Financial education develops tools for life and creates good habits. It can help people deal with cost of living challenges and help break down barriers to opportunity too. Because making the most of your resources when you have less of them is paramount. Many people lack the basic skills of financial acumen, and this disadvantages them through life. But if you have a strong grasp of financial concepts, you're less likely to get into debt. You can make better decisions and prosper. That's why financial education is a must for adults and children alike. And I've got a number of ideas on how we can help educate adults too in this area. According to the government-sponsored Money and Pension Service, 39% of adults, that's more than 20 million people, don't feel confident managing their own money. 11.5 million have less than £100 in savings, and 9 million of us are in serious debt. In a 2022 Legal and General report, Deadline to Breadline, it suggests that the average UK consumer was just 19 days from the breadline if they lost their income. In my previous life in the banking sector, I knew only too well how a lack of financial management blights lives. I sadly saw several people through my career where they didn't plan and manage their finances appropriately, or they didn't plan and protect their futures appropriately. When life took an unexpected turn and circumstances changed, I witnessed some incredibly sad situations where people lost everything. The story this tells is of an urgent need for financial education programmes for adults. It's not just for children. Of course, the key to financially literate adults is to teach financial education in our schools. And although it was added to the national curriculum, as we've heard, in 2014, its delivery is at best patchy. It needs to be improved. A few years ago, I was invited to deliver a financial education session to a group of sixth form students. Following the session, a few teachers came over to me and thanked me for what I had taught them, and then asked me for some advice. And these were the teachers responsible for delivering that financial education to those pupils. Financial education is included in the curriculum, as we've heard, for secondary schools, but I too implore it to be included in primary education, and there's ways to do it within the maths syllabus, or just embracing it within that syllabus. As a member of the all-party parliamentary group for financial education, I support the recommendations that financial education is a mandatory part of English primary curriculum. Training has to be given to teachers, and the subject should be promoted by the government in both primary and secondary education. I just want to finish with a story of a person who I admire for their brilliant financial management. A single parent who juggled finance to bring up 2 boys alone. She had literally different pots for different funds, from summer holidays to Christmas to birthdays, to her contingency fund for a rainy day. Each week, she would use her perfectly crafted budget book to separate out her funds. So much for food, so much for bills, and the remainder would be spread across her pots. She never relied on credit cards or borrowing. Her sons never wanted for anything, saw themselves as equals to their friends, and would only really appreciate how stretched the family finances were when they got older. She had the skill embedded in her from a young age by her parents, and that person was my mum. Being financially educated early can have a profound effect on future generations. We need that change. It's an essential life skill, and I implore the Minister to consider this as part of the curriculum review. Thank you.
Louise Jones.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Broadland and Fakenham for his obvious passion for this subject. In October 2023, the National Trading Standards released research showing that 73% of UK adults have been targeted by scams, with just over a third of those losing money as a result. Whilst this government is cracking down on online crime and fraud, clearly one of the long-term solutions to help prevent against this is to make sure that everybody is financially educated and financially literate. If we educate children and our young people to be more confident with how and why they manage their money, over time they will be less susceptible to these frauds and scams, which sadly can only grow with the development of AI. Now, as we've already heard, many young people form their money habits at a very young age, as young as 7 or 8. And indeed, I can remember my own parents teaching me the importance of saving with my little savings book, and from my little job delivering newspapers, making sure that I put at least some of my £3.50 away every week.
Very good.
But we've also heard, Madam Deputy Speaker, we've also heard that, unfortunately, for those parents who have not managed to have financial literacy, it means that they do sometimes pass on to their children some bad habits as well. And indeed, we've also heard that up to a third of British workers living from paycheck to paycheck. I'm concerned that we are not doing enough to support parents and young people to break this cycle. It's always very shocking to me when I speak to those working in food banks and they say that many of their users there would hugely benefit from financial education and literacy, and even some simple advice on how to just draw up a budget and how to understand to make sure you've got enough money for when bills are going out. Even just some simple things can make a huge difference so that people do not have to end up relying on food banks. With the future that is yet unknown, a pupil entering secondary school this September will likely finish their GCSEs in June 2030 and their A-levels 32, and if they decide to go on to university, may yet graduate in 2035. And I think it's safe to say that whilst we do not know for sure what opportunities are available to them, and it may well look quite different to now, what we can say is that good financial education and literacy will certainly serve them in good stead. We've heard that we have previously added financial literacy education to the national curriculum, but more must be done to make sure that children are being taught. And I think it's important to say there must be the breadth of this financial education. Yes, how to budget, all the good stuff like simple versus compound interest, but again, to understand the importance of saving for a pension and how to recognise when an investment scheme is protected by something like the FCA, so they can avoid some of the more sparkly deals online, shall we say. The good news is that when children say that they have received a financial education and they do remember it, they are more likely to save, feel confident, and indeed save money and use a bank account. So it shows that when effort is put in, it does indeed reap rewards. So to be clear, the need for financial education is very clear to everybody in this house and beyond. It is not a luxury, it is a necessity. I remember very well being taught in depth by trigonometry, and I have to say, I wish I'd been taught about pensions instead. Thank you all.
Luke Charters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And may I thank the Honourable Member for Broadland and Fakenham for securing today's debate. Now, a typical weekend for me starts at the shops. Though not a high street one, though there are plenty of those in York. Instead, it's my toddler's plastic shop, full of fruit, veg and, of course, Yorkshire tea. But when I go to pay with cash, I'm told, no, Daddy, use card. A world away from growing up, even in the 1990s, right? But, Madam Deputy Speaker, we face a great paradox in this country. We have a world-leading financial services sector here in the UK, yet a recent UK finance report said that the UK ranks 15th out of 29 countries for financial literacy among adults. So it's our imperative that we must do better here at home. For too long, we've struggled to bolster financial education in schools, and my wife is a dedicated teacher. Her current battle is teaching her children about the value and shape of a 20p coin. But on a more serious note, I worry about the impact that social media has on children when it comes to financial advice. And I call this the TikTokification of financial education. Often we see influencers giving out unregulated advice, driving harmful products plugged as get-rich-quick schemes. As a former regulator at the FCA myself, I say with some degree of certainty that regulators are not up to speed on this. Moving on, if I may, to the insurance sector. Again, we saw at the FCA that consumers had poor understanding of things like shrinkflation, where their policies didn't keep up to date with their needs. Too rarely did they understand concepts such as auto-renewal. And far too many households, we find in Britain, are either undercovered or overcovered when it comes to insurance.
Would the Honourable Member give way?
I will.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving away. Some people have brought up the issue around scams, and you're touching upon that in your speech, which made me laugh, as your speeches normally do, so thanks for that. But what I'm experiencing from my family and the community that I've grown up in is a lot of the people who are falling victims to things are people that were once extremely savvy when it came to financial management, people that once ran their own businesses, people that have what I would consider to be quite a mature understanding of these things, who are falling into these traps. Isn't the limit of this financial education that we're talking about here that actually we still need very, very strong protections, and actually when it comes to people having more than one insurance policy for the same thing, aren't we failing a lot of people who don't need education? They just need people they can go to protect them and give them advice on issues that they may never fully understand.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and I'll come on to scams, but on the question of advice, I welcome the FCA's advice guidance boundary review, because so often financial advice is too difficult for consumers to access. So when it comes to insurance, Madam Deputy Speaker, we also need greater financial education. May I turn to pensions? And I recently did a bit of research, and I looked at Google Analytics search trends. Since 2004, there's been a rapid increase in those searching opt out of my pension. How can we expect people to want to save in their pensions, though, when their benefits are so poorly communicated? Often we find that the public are asked to fuel a car for a long journey, but when it comes to their retirement, they're not sure about how far that road goes. And that's a cultural shift that we must change. And with the forthcoming pension review, we must reinvent the reinvigoration we need about retirement savings. And so there's never a more important time for educating people about pensions in schools. And now, members will know I'm very passionate about tackling fraud, and indeed my old job before entering this place was breaking fraud attempts in the private sector. Even now as an MP, I see heartbreaking stories of my constituents fall victim to scam. The British population are targeted by organised criminals from across the globe. This is actually driven by the popularity of the English language and affluence of the UK. And I know from a recent visit to the City of London Police that fraud and cybercrime accounts for 50% of all crime. Let that sink in. For too long, the UK has been a target. But I want to praise the Honourable Member for Barnsley North and Lord Hanson in the other place for their important work on this. Greater public awareness on how to spot a scam and socialising some of these concepts is therefore important. Can I give 2 pieces of praise to Martin Lewis? Firstly, for raising awareness about celebrity impersonation scams, and secondly, to his organisation, the MMHPI, who do lots on removing the stigma for those who've been scammed. So greater fraud awareness ultimately means greater education. Now, look, in my view, financial education is not the sole responsibilities of members in this House, government, or even teachers. It's down to firms in the sector themselves. I'm heartened by the engagement I've had with the sector. I also know that Step Change have been doing important work on debt advice, and I also want to give a special shout out to the Financial Inclusion Commission too, which I recently joined. So when it comes to financial education, we must ensure that the financial sector plays their part. And may I just close by returning to my son's plastic greengrocers. I'm aiming to do my bit for the next generation, but I'm just one household. We've got to think about new ways of engaging the generation tomorrow on things like pensions, scams and insurance. This requires financial education in schools, and I hope to play my part in that debate. Thank you.
I call Chris Spoons.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I genuinely thank the member for Filton, for Broadland and Fakenham, and Filton and Bradley Stoke for bringing this debate to the House today. And I say to my honourable friend from York, it's a heptagon, isn't it? Just 20p coin. Okay. First of all, I do want to say very clearly that I absolutely support the need for further financial education in schools. But I am going to come on to a few caveats that you may have sensed by my poker face earlier. But please take these as constructive caveats rather than any sort of destructive caveat. Firstly, I would say, having worked for a homeless charity, I know that you can't budget out of poverty. But this isn't just a conversation about budget, it's a conversation about the wider views and ideas when it comes to financial education. And I think members across this House have absolutely recognised that if we can teach young people about some of these pitfalls, some of these scams, and some of these, the impact of turning to a payday loan shark when when times are tough, I think that's extremely powerful. And look, it's not about us telling young people how they have to live their lives or what they have to do, but it's absolutely awareness about those dangers that we face. Secondly, as many members across this House will know, because I mention it almost every speech that I give, I did used to be a teacher. In fact, I used to be a secondary school maths teacher for 15 years, teaching young people from Year 7 up to Year 13. That included teaching A-level maths and A-level further maths. So I did teach maths up until degree level, and I absolutely loved trigonometry. Wait till you get to further maths trigonometry and sine and cosine rules, mate, I'll tell you, brilliant. And I also actually specialise in statistics, strangely enough, despite my engineering degree. There is a misapprehension that ability to teach maths equates, if you'll excuse the pun, to an ability to teach finance. Now, if this was the ordinary to and fro that we normally see in this chamber, I would defend myself by pointing out that I can read a book, but I can't teach English literature. And I would also point out to members that although finance includes numbers and maths includes numbers, it's true to say that history and English both include words, but they are different subjects. When I chat to my friend, he is a Conservative, we have very animated discussions. He's the reason I'm actually in this place about education. I once said to him, I said, what do you think is the most important skill of a teacher? And he said to me, well, discipline, he said to me, the ability to make sure you get your marking done on time. And he came up with a whole list of things. And I said to him, the one thing you haven't mentioned is the ability to explain things clearly. Surely that's the most important skill of a teacher. Now, I'd say to the honourable member opposite, I could teach him how to do compound interest. That does come up on the maths curriculum, it's true to say. But if I was asked to teach him about how pensions work, I would struggle. Now, that doesn't mean I don't know how pensions work, but it does mean that I haven't been taught the skills to be able to teach it to somebody else. And that skill is something that you don't just come with naturally. You have to be trained to do it. What I'm saying in a very roundabout way, and I hope it's seen as constructive and certainly not critical, is that if we believe in financial education as being... That's just like being back at school, isn't it? Put the phone in the box, Minister. If we... You don't have to, really. If we believe in financial education as being important in schools, it does need to be taught properly. The honourable member opposite correctly raised the issue that this was brought through in this place, over 10 years ago, but it wasn't truly being taught to the way we would like to see it in schools. I actually would like to see it as a distinct, bespoke subject, or at very worst, a module as part of something like business studies or economics. My wife is an economics teacher, so she'll love me for this suggestion, rather than just adding to the already extensive maths curriculum, which I don't believe would be feasible, and I don't actually believe it would have the desired outcomes that this House wants. The member opposite also spoke about the importance of it being measurable, and I couldn't agree more. One of my biggest frustrations as a maths teacher, I've got time, Madam Deputy Speaker, haven't I? I won't go on a big story, but one of my biggest frustrations as a maths teacher was when a student would say to me, "Is this on the exam?" And it's always frustrating because I generally love maths. I wanted to teach people that A squared plus B squared equals C squared, not because it was going to come up on the exam, because it's truly interesting. If I say you'd be a model student, yeah, really. However, we have to recognise where we are currently in our school system. If young people don't think there's going to be an exam on it, they don't think that it's going to be measurable, and equally if teachers don't see that it's going to be measurable in terms of an Ofsted inspection, then it is going to be moved down the list. We have to recognise that a lot of teachers have a lot on their plates, and actually if we want financial education to be on the top of the plate, the cherry on the top perhaps, we need to ensure that it's measurable, that it's accountable and it's taken seriously. I do not believe a bolt onto the maths curriculum will make that happen. I would actually much prefer to see, as a bespoke subject. I've rambled on enough, but hopefully I've made my points. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Bobby Dean.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm not quite sure I'm supposed to follow the Honourable Member for Harlow. It was extremely entertaining and informative. I want to also share my thanks to the Member for Broadland and Fakenham for bringing this forward. I think you spoke with passion and empathy for those that are struggling with financial literacy as well, and made sure that this House knows how important that topic is. I think all members in this House have probably at some point come across someone on a doorstep, or maybe one of their family members or friends say that they just don't get taught what they need to know in life in school. And of course that's overdone slightly. The fundamentals of maths, science and literacy do serve us well in life. But they do have a point. There is truth in that statement. And some of the hard, practical, daily challenges of adulthood are often not addressed properly, at least not in an applied way, during our education. And perhaps nowhere this is more apparent than in financial literacy. This is, of course, distinct from numeracy. It's not about just adding and subtracting or even working out percentages. It's about budgeting, debt management, saving for the future, and investing. And these are things that could empower people to make better decisions for their lives and set them up to achieve their goals. But we let people down when we view these skills as specialist instead of essential. And let me focus for a moment on two elements in particular, investing and debt. Now, the British seem to have a big problem with investing. There's kind of an assumption that it's for traders or the rich, and our national conversations tend to shy away from it. And I think pensions are probably about the only arena where it is discussed properly. But even then, it's kind of pushed to the back of mind, and we only have, it's all auto-enrolled, and it's sort of dealt with outside by others. And I want to pick up on a point made by the member for Swindon North when he talked about the self-employed and how few of them invest in their own pensions. That certainly happened to my parents, self-employed their life. And to me, for the large bulk of my career too, I did not invest in a pension while I was self-employed. But if Brits were equipped with the knowledge and the skills to make relatively safe, sensible investments over the course of their lifetimes, the benefits to those individuals and the economy as a whole is enormous. In fact, research by Moneybox revealed that 2/3 of Britons are £65,000 worse off on average due to low financial confidence and knowledge. Yeah. And astonishingly, they suggest that if these people were better equipped, it would equate to a potential £2 trillion of extra spending power in the UK economy over their lifetimes. Now, you might think that this difference merely correlates with the haves and the have-nots, but their research found that in most instances, the key indicator of success was financial confidence and not where people started in life. Now, this alone should motivate us to improve the delivery of financial education in schools, but also to ensure that all adults can equip themselves better today as well. And though it's beyond the scope of the debate today, this is where the advice guidance boundary review could be crucial for Britain's growth prospects. We must upskill all of Britain today and not only the citizens of the future. Now, moving on to debt. The consequences of getting this wrong are grave. Our failure to equip people with the knowledge they need to manage and escape debt puts the most vulnerable in our society at risk. Risk of hunger, risk of ill health, risk of financial ruin. And my inbox is full of people that reach crisis point before seeking help. And in each case, there were so many straightforward steps an individual could have taken to prevent escalation. But a combination of shame and financial literacy leaves people stranded, helplessly watching on as their situation goes from bad to worse. And I'd like to pick up on the member for Harlow's point about you can't budget your way out of poverty, and he's absolutely right. But we can stop people from spiralling and making things worse. And this is a point that is deeply personal to me. I've seen my family suffer from crippling nature of debt on more than one occasion, both as a child and as an adult. And I sometimes think to myself, I just wish that they reached out to me sooner. But I do have a better wish than that. And that is that I wish that our education system and society more broadly talked about debt and how to deal with it far more openly. When I visited my local Citizen Advice Bureau in Wallington recently, they told me about how predatory companies are offering individual voluntary arrangements, or IVAs, to people that are totally ill-suited to them. On the face of it, the attraction is clear. Instead of struggling with debt on multiple fronts, have a company deal with all that for you and make one simple regular payment to them instead. The trouble is that these companies don't always act in the individual's interest. They have incentive to sell IVAs as they make money from them, and they end up being sold to people who have better alternatives, such as debt management orders. This practice needs to be regulated better, but we should also empower citizens to know better too. The Liberal Democrats support a modernised curriculum, a curriculum for life, to ensure that children are prepared with the skills required for adulthood, with a focus on equipping students with a better understanding of personal finance and financial responsibility. Most clearly, financial education needs to start early and must become a key part of the primary curriculum. Research shows that money habits are set at the age of 7, yet there is currently no statutory requirement to teach personal finance in primary schools in England. Furthermore, we must support teachers to deliver this education effectively. This means providing centralised guidance, teacher training and signposting quality resources. The government should back the national campaign to raise awareness of financial education and its benefits, supporting initiatives like My Money Week, which already promote financial literacy in schools and communities. But this job does not end in school, and the urgency in addressing literacy at large cannot be overstated. As the member for York outlined, today's young people are increasingly turning to social media for financial advice. Just last week, Your Money, a financial wellbeing charity, found that 6 in 10 people follow so-called financial influencers, or finfluencers, which is difficult to say, with 77% trusting their advice, and alarmingly 1 in 10 said they would act on such advice without further research. If we don't fill the gaps, others will. Yep. The Liberal Democrats will continue to push for measures that address financial exclusion. This can be done by supporting banking hubs with the crucial offer of face-to-face advice, as well as by protecting funding for citizen advice bureaus, just like the one that I visited in Wallington. Madam Deputy Speaker, the evidence is overwhelming. Financial education is not a nice-to-have. It is essential for the well-being of our citizens and the future of our economy. I urge the government to act decisively and ensure that every child in the UK has the access to the financial education they need and deserve. Thank you.
I call Shadow Minister Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Broadland and Fakenham, on securing this important debate and commend him for his sustained efforts to drive up the quality and availability of financial education offered to our young people. There is sometimes a tendency in this House, perhaps an understandable one, to gravitate towards short-termism. It is therefore a sincere pleasure to follow on from my honourable friend, who, along with his colleagues at the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Financial Education for Young People, has been doing such excellent work to promote reforms that take a longer view and are geared towards boosting the life chances of the generations to come. Good financial education, delivered, yes, by schools, but also by parents, families and within communities, has the potential to produce a generation wise to the dangers of credit card debt, alert to the practices of predatory payday lenders, and confident in their ability to open a bank account and budget appropriately. If we are truly committed to reducing inequality and ensuring that everyone has the best possible start in life, as I believe we all are in this place, then I can think of a few better ideas than ensuring that all young people enter adulthood with a sound grasp of how to manage their money. The British public seem to share this assessment. A recent survey of UK adults conducted by Santander revealed that a full 70% felt better financial education in their younger years would have improved their ability to manage their finances through the ongoing cost of living crisis. Meanwhile, 2/3 of young people believe that a lack of financial education has played a role in their amassing the debts they currently hold. Indeed, it is not just adults. Children too are deeply concerned about financial matters, with the London Institute of Banking and Finance reporting in 2023 that 68% of children worry about money and their personal finances. This figure is hardly surprising when we consider that today's children are the most digitally exposed in history, meaning that they face a constant barrage of offers to spend money in alluring but wasteful ways. Many of the apps downloaded onto the phones our children spend so much time on are full of shining icons inviting them with the tap of a finger to spend real-world money in exchange for worthless in-game currencies, while young players of online games are prompted to spend, in some cases, hundreds of pounds on loot boxes or so-called cosmetic items, that is to say, a virtual in-game weapon or outfit that is a slightly different colour to the default option. Clearly, both to protect them in the present and prepare them for the future, financial literacy is a skill our children and young people need. While there is no doubt work still to be done, I would like to briefly draw attention to the solid foundations already laid by successive Conservative governments over the past 14 years. After all, it was the Conservatives that left England with one of the top-performing countries for education. Under a Conservative government, children in England were named best in the West for reading and ranked the best at maths in the Western world in the TIMSS 2023 study. It was also a Conservative government which created a national network of 40 math hubs, supporting schools in improving their mathematics teaching. This network is a partnership of schools, colleges and other organisations who work together to provide support for maths teaching in their region. The positive impact of these hubs on a young person's ability to manage and understand money and finance is obvious. We were also clear that we intended to go further. That is why at the last election we set out a comprehensive plan to ensure every child studies maths to the age of 18, so that they leave school with good numeracy skills that in turn would have helped them navigate their finances with confidence. This is not to suggest that the entire burden of providing robust financial education can or should fall upon our schools. As with so many things, families too have a central role to play, ensuring that children are instilled with good financial common sense. This does not need to be overly complex. Indeed, simple measures like offering small amounts of weekly pocket money can help normalise good habits like saving and thinking carefully before making purchases. According to an ING survey of 12,000 parents across Europe, giving children pocket money reduces the risk of them getting into debt as adults.
Would you already give way at that point?
Absolutely, I will give way.
There's a good example. I'm that example. Whenever I was 16, my mum took me down to the Northern Bank, as it was, £10. See, £10, you could have bought a second-hand car in those days. But just give me £10, put it in the bank account, and she told me, so would the Honourable agree with me, if everybody had a mother like mine, they'd be a lot better off?
I thank the Honourable Member for that great contribution to this debate. And I agree that it's all these small things that add up and really make a difference to our financial literacy. I myself am a chartered accountant, but it's not that has made me financially literate. It is the lessons I was taught from my family. It is the jobs that I did when I was young. And I think some of the members here today have made great examples of how they have understood finance. Additionally, in an increasingly contactless world, it is important that children and young people physically see and feel cash. This is the way value is tangibly understood. Coming back to schools, though, as has been noted already, financial education is not a statutory part of the national curriculum in primary schools in England. This contrasts with Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it is very much embedded at primary level. Given the way our children are relentlessly pressured to spend money they may not even have, and in light of research done at Cambridge University, which suggests that the habits and attitudes towards money are formed by the age of 7, there is much logic to the argument that financial education, whether delivered by schools, parents, or even community hubs and other organisations, should not wait for the later years and should be something that is continuous. Good financial education that starts early is also something that teachers feel to be important for the future well-being of young people. According to a survey of primary school teachers in 2020, 82% considered teaching financial education to be very important. This is something we may hear more on when the ongoing Francis review of the national curriculum is complete, and I urge the Minister to answer my honourable friends' questions with respect to the government's plans for the curriculum on this matter. Yes. In secondary schools, the picture is somewhat different. In 2014, the then Conservative government acted to ensure that financial education was placed on a statutory footing in local authority schools. However, the all-party parliamentary group on financial education for young people, which I will once again praise as an outstanding example of everything an APPG should aspire to be, reported in their Building Beyond Barriers report in 2023 that over half of teachers did not know that financial education is part of the curriculum at all. That is a matter of some concern, and it is certainly important that these topics are addressed in the classroom in an appropriate way. I have no doubt that our hard-working teachers are keen to play their part in delivering this content. In the same report, 3 in 4 teachers were found to believe that teachers should play a leading role in imparting financial skills onto children. The obstacles were reported to be inadequate training, limited funding, and an understandable feeling that there simply was not sufficient time in the school year to deliver these lessons. In government, the Conservatives sought to mitigate the funding issue with an investment of over £1 million to embed and scale teacher training in financial education. The Money and Pension Service did excellent work developing and testing approaches to supporting teachers and practitioners working with children and young people in vulnerable circumstances to deliver financial education. Ultimately, though, Madam Deputy Speaker, we must acknowledge that the school timetable is already under intense pressure, with many other competing calls on limited time. That is why I would argue that the good financial education every child deserves will be best delivered, yes, in schools, but also in the family setting, in communities, and with the help of valuable resources. I will conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, with a simple message, which I hope underscores some of the excellent contributions we have heard today. Financial education is invaluable and transforms life outcomes. Research undertaken by Compare the Market tells us that just 2/5 of young adults today rank as financially literate. We can and must do better. I know that we on this side of the House will be keeping these matters under careful review, and I hope the Minister will address the questions raised today. My thanks once again to all those who have spoken today, in particular my honourable friend, the member for Broadland and Fakenham.
Minister Janet Derby.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I congratulate the Honourable Member for Broadland and Fakenham on securing this debate on this important subject. I also thank the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Financial Education for Young People for highlighting the importance of financial education through their focused inquiries, and I absolutely recognise this is an esteemed APPG. I will also endeavour to respond to the Honourable Member for Broadland and Fakenham points that he has made, but I also wish to acknowledge the many points that have been made across this chamber from honourable friends and indeed honourable members. My honourable friend for Filton and Bradley Stoke spoke about the ability to be confident to make financial decisions that are right for them, and also mentioned financial education in her maiden speech. The Honourable Member for Leicestershire spoke about online purchases, and the importance of making sure that there's that full understanding of those what's happening in that space. My honourable friend for Swindon North spoke about self-employed people and the need to understand about pensions. Honourable Member for Guildford very much spoke about financial literacy from an early age. And there's many honourable members for North West Leicestershire, North Warwickshire and Bedworth, Southend West and Leigh, North East Bedfordshire, York Outer, all spoke about investments, banks, parents, varied things, all to do with education and financial education for children and young people. And indeed, my honourable friend for Harlow, also being a teacher himself, spoke passionately about financial education, and indeed that alarm was a school alarm, I thought I might add. And of course the opposition spokesperson and opposition minister also spoke on this important area and topic. And moving to my response, the skills, knowledge, attitudes and behaviour that help people to manage money and achieve good financial well-being begin to develop from an early age and continue to develop through childhood and indeed at teenage years. Research shows that financial education in schools has a positive impact on children and young people's financial capability. The Money and Pension Service survey of children and young people found that those who recall learning about money at school were more likely to be active savers, have a bank account that they use, be confident with money management, and have positive attitudes towards money. It is so important to teach these things at the right time, and it is never too early to start. Young people may be making financial decisions even now around digital transactions, in-game currencies, and they need to be aware of these issues and potential dangers. Maths underpins effective financial management, including financial risk, and the confident and competent application of financial skills and tools. The Programme for International Students Assessment, PISA, results show a strong correlation between results in financial literacy and maths, with a correlation on average of 0.87 across the OECD countries. The primary maths curriculum arithmetic knowledge that supports pupils' ability to manage budgets and money, including, for example, calculations with money and percentages. In secondary maths, pupils are taught topics such as how to calculate compound interest, which is relevant for personal finance. The non-statutory primary citizens programme, make sure I've got that correct, study at Key Stage 1 and 2 equip pupils to understand the sources and purpose of money and the benefits of savings. It makes clear that financial contexts are useful for learning about making choices and exploring social and moral dilemmas. The National Curriculum for Citizenship at Key Stage 3 and 4 prepares students to manage their money well and plan for future financial needs. Key Stage 3 covers the functions and uses of money, day-to-day money management, budgeting and managing risk. And Key Stage 4 covers income and expenditure, credit and debt, insurance, savings, pensions, financial products and services. But obviously, more needs to be done to embed learning and to understand that children fully and young people fully understand. The computing curriculum provides the fundamental e-safety knowledge and thinking skills that empower children to make well-informed decisions about technology, which may include using it in a financial context. Through statutory relationships, sex and health education, RSHE, pupils are taught about internet safety and online harm, such as the risk associated with online gambling and the accumulation of debt. Pupils also learn how debt is generated, collected, shared and used online. Now, moving to the curriculum and assessment review that has been mentioned across this chamber. High and rising school standards are at the heart of the opportunity mission for this government, and that is why the government has established an independent, expert-led curriculum and assessment review covering ages from 5 to 18, chaired by Professor Becky Francis CBE. The review seeks to deliver an excellent foundation in core subjects, including maths, and a rich and broad, inclusive and innovative curriculum that readies young people for life and work. The review group will publish an interim report in early spring, setting out its interim findings and confirming the key areas for further work, and publish its final report with recommendations this autumn. We will take decisions on what changes need to be made in light of these recommendations. Ofsted Inspection currently considers whether pupils are receiving a rounded education, evaluating the quality of education, including pupils' achievement over time, behaviour and attitudes, personal development and leadership and management. All schools, regardless of category and phrase, are inspected against their ability to deliver a broad and balanced curriculum. Ofsted inspectors evaluate the quality of education, and elements of financial education may be in scope when Ofsted conducts a deep dive into mathematics. Now, the Money and Pension Service is an arm's-length body of the government for the Department for Works and Pensions, with a statutory duty to coordinate the UK Strategy for Financial Wellbeing. They published the UK Strategy for Financial Wellbeing in January 2020, a 10-year framework to help UK citizens to make the most of their money and pensions. And one of the key themes of the strategy is supporting the financial well-being of children and young people. It sets a national goal to ensure that 2 million more children and young people receive a meaningful financial education by 2030. Now, as a government, we will consider further the suitability of support available to schools in light of the curriculum review outcomes. However, it might be more helpful to the House if I set out what is already available by way of support. The Money and Pension Service has published guidance setting out how schools can improve the financial education they deliver and signposting to services and resources. The Financial Education Quality Mark, funded by the Money and Pension Service and delivered by Young Enterprise, quality assures resources for teachers and others to support the provision of financial education. Resources with the Financial Education Quality Mark are freely available on the Young Money Research Hub. Support for curriculum delivery is also available option, free and adaptable resources from Oak National Academy. Now that Oak has completed its initial curriculum resources for maths, and it will be producing additional lessons on financial education and applying maths in real life context across key stage 1 to 4. These are expected to be available from spring 2025. Lessons on finance and the economy also featured in Oak's new citizenship curriculum, launched earlier this academic year. Teaching resources for these lessons will be released by autumn again 2025. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, HM Treasury works closely with the financial services sector to ensure that providers play a role in supporting people to manage their money. In 2021, financial services organisations were the largest funders and providers of financial education programmes, with 46 programmes reaching 4.7 million children and young people, with a total spend of 7.5 million. In 2023, UK finance members, including banks and other financial service providers, provided financial education lessons to over 4.1 million children and young people in schools and community settings. On 5th of December, it was announced that the government will develop a financial inclusion strategy alongside a supporting committee to tackle the problem of financial exclusion. The government will work with consumer groups and industry on the development of this strategy, which will aim to tackle barriers to individual and households' ability to access affordable and appropriate financial products and services. As part of this, the committee will consider the role played by the financial capability in consumers' use and understanding of products. Madam Deputy Speaker, as I come to close, I do wish to thank the honourable gentleman for bringing this matter forward, and those who have contributed so knowledgeably and so articulately in this debate today. Many schools already have high-quality financial educational provision in place. However, every child and young person should have every opportunity to achieve and thrive. The reforms I've set out will ensure every child is set up for the best start in life, including through a curriculum that is rich and broad, inclusive and innovative, that readies young people for life and work. There is always much that needs to be done, and we must take full, and we do take responsibility. We will build on our early efforts and work at pace to ensure every child has the qualified expert teachers that they need. We recognise that training needs to evolve so that teachers remain competent and confident to teach and adapt their curriculum. And that is why the work of the Money and Pension Service through their data collection, national strategy and delivery plans is so important, and why we must continue to work closely across government and in partnership with others to ensure that we approach the challenges in a coordinated and evidence-driven way. We will consider what more we can do in the context of the curriculum and assessment review and workforce reforms to ensure that the financial education pupils get is relevant and taught by confident and committed teachers with much passion. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Jerome Mayhew to wind up.
Well, I'm very grateful. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've got a number of thanks to make. First of all, to Young Enterprise, the Secretariat of the All-Party Parliamentary Group, the Money and Pension Service, Go Henry, My Bank, HSBC, Santander, Your Money, Money Wellness, the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, AQA, UK Finance, and the Bank of England, who have all briefed in advance of this debate. I also want to thank particularly the Honourable Member for Filton and Bradley Stoke, my co-conspirator in this debate, and to be one of the first to congratulate the Honourable Member for Reigate for her first outing at the dispatch box. I thought she did brilliantly. Now, when talking about financial education, I start with my own family, but I realised I may have gone a bit too far when one of my grown-up children confided to me recently that she feels physically sick every time she spends money. So I may have overdone it a little bit. But it's equally the case that 175 years ago, my forebear, one Henry Mayhew, was declared bankrupt for the third time. Now, his great friend was Charles Dickens, and it's said that the character of Mr. Micawber was based on Henry. And I want to end this debate by referring to one of the more famous quotes of Mr. McCorber, which was, annual income £20, annual expenditure 1996, result happiness. Annual income £20, annual expenditure £20 naught and 6, result misery. How right he was.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes